What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. I believe this might be the first time I've ever done a 3 episode week. With that in mind, I might try and keep this NASCAR preview episode a little bit shorter. Most of these are short anyway, but I've already released 2 super long MLB preview episodes, so I might try and keep this one a little bit shorter. Just trying to be nice, keeping in mind how long the last 2 episodes were. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into this week's NASCAR preview. We are at one of my favorite tracks, Martinsville, the paperclip. A lot of legendary moments there, including as of late. Obviously, the fall race gets a lot of the love because it's the next to last race of the year, but the spring race can be quite fun too. So here's some storylines. Larson finally got his first win. I think it tells you how good Larson is when you're not even 2 months into the season and everybody's like, why hasn't Larson won a race yet? But he finally quieted it down. It wasn't as dominant as he can be. But the important thing is that he won the race and ran up front all day. Larson, big surprise, locked into the playoffs. And the B streak is finally broken. The first 5 races of the year, granted 3 of them were won by the same person, but the first 5 races of the year were all won by somebody with the last name starting with B. And early on, it certainly looked like that could happen again with guys like Bowman and Blaney being up front and having fast cars. Briscoe was around the top all day. Byron was up front early. So it certainly seemed like we could be heading there again. But Larson and his high line at Miami prevailed through on what was almost a weekend sweep. Is the best rising to the top? I feel like the last couple races it has been more and more, and I think it was at Miami. You're seeing the best teams, the best drivers have the speed and running up front. And some of these guys that I'll talk about later that had hot starts, like a Ricky Stenhouse or Michael McDowell, they're starting to fade a little bit and not have the same consistent speed. And I think that's because the track type we're on and the track type that we're on means that the best teams and the best drivers are usually going to consistently be up front. So yes, I think the best are officially rising to the top after a crazy first month to the season. And I think if you have speed now, you're probably going to have speed most of the season. And if you don't, it doesn't mean you're out. It just means you have a little bit more work to do. Let's go short track racing. I know Phoenix is kind of a short track, but this is like short track, a half-mile racetrack, the paperclip. It has been hard to pass there in next gen, so it's kind of like track position is more important than anything else. Hard to pass without putting a bumper to somebody. It ought to be interesting. Again, I love short tracks; they're my favorite kind of track in NASCAR, but I'm hoping the racing continues to get better, so everybody else likes it as much as I do. And I can't wait for the eventual time point this weekend when there's pretty much one big line of cars and you don't know where the leader is, and the leader's getting slowed down by 2 lappers or 2 guys trying to not be a lap down, and then you have the rest of the guys trying to. Anyway, I love how the field gets intermingled. Sometimes it's actually a bad thing, I'll admit that, but I think a lot of times it makes for a fun race and can sometimes mean nobody's actually out of it, assuming you can work your way through lap traffic better than the leader. Is Hendrick just better this year? It's kind of early to say that, and they've only won 2 of the 6 races. But even the races they've lost, they've been super fast and out front. They have multiple races where they have all of their drivers top 10 in speed, it feels like, or at least competitive enough to get a top 10. I know Hendrick is the best team in NASCAR, but it certainly looks like they have a lot of depth and a lot of teams that could be playoff contenders, championship contenders. Byron and Larson usually are. Chase Elliott is, and Alex Bowman's off to a phenomenal start. No other 4-car team, or really even 3-car team, I think, has the depth and consistent speed as Hendrick. Maybe that's not anything new. Maybe it is. But are they just better this year? I think eventually other teams are going to consistently figure out. Joe Gibbs is usually not that far behind, and I think Gibbs is going to get better and faster as well. Blaney might be right there with the Hendrick cars. I mean, Blaney's had speed at like every track this year. He just bad luck. Blaney already has 2 blown engines in 2 races he could have won. So there has been some guys that go up and challenge. Obviously, Christopher Bell has won 3 races, but he's also not been the fastest this year. So who knows? But I definitely feel like right now Hendrick just has a little bit of an edge over the rest of the field. And I just hinted at it. Bad luck Blaney, man. I think he's been one of the top 3 or 4 fastest cars. Like if you combine all the tracks together, and he just can't find victory lane. He has some finishes that are not representative of the speed he had. He's getting caught up in other people's wrecks. He has multiple blown engines already. Uh, I feel bad for Ryan Blaney, but usually if you keep having speed, if you're one of the fastest cars on the track every week, eventually the luck is going to break your way and you're going to win. Because at the end of the day, even if you don't have the fastest car, if you can run out front every week, eventually you're going to find your way to victory lane. And I think if Blaney can continue and the 12 team can continue to have this speed, they'll be championship contenders when it's all said and done. History at Martinsville. We're back to my most top fives and top tens. There's been 6 races, so I feel like there's enough here to do it, to do top fives and top tens for. Winners in the next gen era at Martinsville: William Byron. The first race, Christopher Bell in that memorable run to the championship for. That Christopher Bell win is the same win where Ross Chastain did the Hail Melon to get in. Kyle Larson winning a spring race here. Ryan Blaney winning in 23 on his run, his kind of unexpected run to the championship. William Byron winning April again. William Byron is in Hendrick Motorsport. William Byron has won 2 of the 3 spring races. Hendrick Motorsports has won all 3 spring races at Martinsville. Maybe keep that in mind for this week. And then Ryan Blaney winning again last playoffs at Martinsville. Best average finish here. Ryan Blaney, what a shocker. A guy who's won 2 races has the best average finish of 3.5, which means he averages a top 5 finish here. He loves this track, and for a while, I feel like in his career, it was like, can he win at Martinsville? He was always up front. He was always one of the best Martinsville drivers, but he couldn't get in the victory lane. Now he has 2 wins in 2 years there. Can he make it 3 wins in 3 years and 3 of the last 4? Joe Logano, another guy who's had speed here. He has not yet won in next gen, but he's still been super fast. He's always been fast on Martinsville, even before the next gen car. Joey Logano's up there for obvious reasons. Kyle Larson, another guy who's won here, always up front. Those Hendrick cars are always fast here. Maybe I need to give more love to the Penske cars, considering they have, the 2 best average finishers here. But the next 3 are all Hendrick. Kyle Larson at 5.5. William Byron and Elliott are razor thin at 8.5 and 8.7. Again, those Hendrick cars seem to have speed at this track. They always have had speed at Martinsville. I think back to the days where Gordon and Jimmy would dominate races up front and first and second here. And then Chase Briscoe, maybe a little bit of an unexpected name. But obviously he's been with SHR until this season, and he always seems to qualify and run well at this racetrack. I'll be interested to see if, Joe Gibbs is a faster ride than Stuart Haas was, especially when Briscoe was at Stuart Haas. Does that upgrade in ride help Chase Briscoe maybe get in the victory lane at Martinsville? Maybe. Most top 5s in 6 races, Blaney has 5. Maybe that explains his average finish. Larson and Hamlin are tied with 4. And then Joey Logano has managed an average finish of 5.2 with only 3 out of 6 races finishing in the top 5. I think that's quite impressive. And then there is 4 people tied at 2 top 5s in 6 races: Ross Chastain, Chase Briscoe, Chase Elliott, and William Byron. And then most top 10s, Ryan Blaney at 6. Joey Logano at 6, meaning every single next-gen race at Martinsville, both Logano and Blaney have been in the top 10, or at least finished in the top 10. Pretty good stat if you're Penske or Team Penske. Chase Elliott has 5 out of 6 races in the top 10, tied with his teammate Kyle Larson and Chase Briscoe. And then William Byron and Denny Hamlin, 2 other guys who get around this track pretty darn quick and like it, are really tied at 6, but they are tied at 4 out of 6 races in the top 10. And I think those top 7 will probably have a good race this time. Back to average finish, you see the little star there. Kurt Busch technically has an average finish of 6 in the next gen, but he only did 1 race. And then Eric Almirola has is 5th in next gen average finish at Martinsville, but again, he is no longer in the Cup Series. He is part-time in the Xfinity Series. So I think it made sense to include him since he's not racing this weekend. Favorites to win. Well, you heard me talking on terms of teams. You heard me bring up these three teams. I think I would honestly give it like an 80% chance your winner's coming from Hendrick, Gibbs, or Penske. They're the only ones that have won here under the next gen. They're the ones that have consistently performed the best here. Hendrick has always performed well here. Joe Gibbs has historically performed well here, although I don't think they have the wins that to maybe show for it in next gen. They only have one. And then Team Penske with Blaney and Logano. Maybe, and I'll be interested. Josh Berry may have some speed this week. You know, historically, he's a good short track racer, loves short tracks, and he's effectively in a fourth Penske car. So I think those three are far and away the best. And then 23XI, Tyler Reddick hasn't quite figured out Martinsville yet, but there, you know that 23XI is going to have speed. And Bubba Wallace loves Martinsville. It's one of his favorite tracks, and he historically has always done well here in the Cup Series, going back to when he was at Richard Petty Motorsports. And then Trackhouse Racing, again, I mentioned Ross Chastain. I feel like these top three teams are far and above everybody else, and the rest of the teams have some inconsistency. But Ross Chastain has been fast with Trackhouse at Martinsville. It seems to reason he can have a good run this weekend, a run that he would need to have after a disappointing week last week. And then driver rankings. Obviously, Ryan Blaney, he's been fast all year. He's won 2 of the last 3 races here. I'm going to pick Ryan Blaney as my favorite and the most likely guy to win. I'm going to pick Kyle Larson, best all-around driver in NASCAR, always has fast cars, and Hendrick loves this track. For a very similar reason, I have William Byron. He's won here just like Kyle Larson has. William Byron has actually won here twice. Doesn't have the same top 5 or top 10 as his teammate Larson, but he's proven he can win here multiple times in next gen, and both of those guys are going to probably be in some of the fastest cars in the track with Hendrick. Joey Logano has won here before, has a great average finish. He's always been competitive here his whole career. I look to see Joey Logano near the front, especially because the 22 team desperately needs a good run to kind of get their season back on track after they've struggled a little bit early on. Chase Elliott. Again, he hasn't necessarily struggled. He's in actually a pretty good position points wise, but I don't think you've seen him up front as much as maybe you would expect to see him. He loves this track. He's been great at this track. Some of the earliest memories, some of the earliest times I can remember him being at the center of a race has been at Martinsville back when he was still in the 24. I expect to see Chase Elliott try and get some momentum going at this racetrack this weekend. And then I have Joe Gibbs Racing teammates. I don't think Joe Gibbs has had the consistent speed, but I think Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe are both great options to win this race. I think Briscoe and Hamlin both can build on the momentum they got last week at Miami. They're both fast at this track. Hamlin's won here before, although not in this car. Chase Briscoe loves this track. He's qualified well here. He's run well here. Both of these guys I look to get a lot of stage points in this race, or at least attempt to, and run up front. It's to me, it's a matter of can Joe Gibbs Racing compete with the speed Hendrick and Team Penske has bought. I think Gibbs is a little bit better and more consistent, and I think that they'll have 3 drivers compared to Penske's 2 that are fast, because I think Christopher Bell will be there too. But Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe, I look to have good finishes and collecting points. Ross Chastain, I've kind of talked about him already. He's done well at this track. Obviously, the Hail Melon moment, that was incredibly memorable. That was all over social media, I feel like. I think Ross Chastain is capable of running well here. He's done it before, and it's not just a Hail Melon. He's run well here a couple other times in next gen. Look out for Ross Chastain to try and rebound from a rough week last week. And then 2 guys that have momentum and are in a good spot on points. Bubba Wallace off to the best start of a season in his career. And I would argue Alex Bowman is, from an average finish and speed standpoint. I know he's won races early in the year, so I don't want to say it's better than those years where he's won a race early to start the year. But Bowman is having a great start to the year. He's had speed at like every track. He's running in the top 10 a lot. And Bubba Wallace is doing the same thing. They're both in a great place in points. I think I have Bubba a little bit ahead of Bowman because Bubba likes this track and has performed better here than Alex Bowman. But look out for both of these guys. Wouldn't surprise me at all if 8 of these guys finish in the top 10. There's some guys that just off this list, like Christopher Bell, like Chris Buescher, like Brad Keselowski that I can see having a good day. Maybe even a Ryan Preece, some more of those four teams. And maybe Tyler Reddick figures it out with 23XI. But I think largely it's going to be the names that everybody knows, the teams that everybody knows that are going to be successful this weekend at Martinsville. So when you're thinking about your favorites to win, I would keep the big guns in mind and not think about a lot of upsets. Driver power rankings this week. We have some movement. Obviously, Kyle Larson has been having a good season, and now Kyle Larson won a race, so it's kind of dumb not to have him number one. He's the hottest driver. He should be. William Byron faded a little bit in the third stage last week, but he's still been arguably the fastest driver in NASCAR. A lot of the advanced stats and analytics say Byron is top 3 in every single important category. So speed, restarts, passing ability, all that stuff. Byron's at the very top. Wouldn't surprise me to see William Byron get back in victory lane this week either. I believe he's still your points leader for a reason. Look out for Willie B. And then Alex Bowman is super hot coming into this race. Almost won last week, ran up front after qualifying first. Is stacking together a lot of good days and a lot of good finishes. And when that happens, you get the momentum going, and you usually win a race soon after that. As long as you're stacking good days together, maybe this is the Martinsville race. Alex Bowman finally puts it all together. I dropped Ryan Blaney a little bit, but not as much as I think a lot of other people do. I know he had a bad finish, but he's still one of the 3 fastest cars. I think your 3 fastest teams this year have been the 5, the 24, and the 12. And he has 2 blown engines, and if it wasn't for those 2 blown engines, he could very well have 2 wins this year. I think he definitely wins one of them. I think Blaney definitely had the short run speed to get out ahead. Maybe Larson still would have ran him down at Miami. Who knows? I guess nobody ever will. But Ryan Blaney is super fast, and I don't want to drop him too far because he's not in an awful spot on points. And he still, I think, has been one of the best drivers in NASCAR to start the year. He can't really control broken engine or blown engines in my mind, so I don't want to penalize him too bad for that. Denny Hamlin, he kind of said this on his podcast, right? He's getting into the stretch of the schedule that he really liked, with tracks he thought he would be strong at, and he's going to start building momentum. And so far, he's done exactly that, getting consistent top 10s, having, top 5, top 10 speed, and his team is putting together good day after good day. It's almost like Denny Hamlin's an experienced vet that knows where he excels. Christopher Bell, after winning 3 races in a row, the last 2 races he's finished outside the top 10. I guess it shows you the highs and lows of NASCAR, right? Obviously, the guy who's won half of the races this year can't be too far down on your list. And he has one here, so maybe Christopher Bell gets in the top 10 and gets some momentum going in the right direction this week. Still has been one of the better drivers in NASCAR. Still has a really, really darn good start to the season with those 3 wins. Tyler Reddick dropped a little bit, didn't perform the way I think he's capable of at Miami. He didn't seem like he was a fan of his car. Still managed to get a top 10, and I feel like it could have been a heck of a lot worse than that. But again, anytime you don't like your car, you don't think you're fast enough, and you find a way to get a top 10, that's a good day. Tyler Reddick did. He's been running out front a lot, has some good finishes. He's good on points. I look to see Tyler Reddick continue to be competitive. Bubba Wallace, I talked about him a lot already. Loves this track. Led some laps last week. Got good stage points. Got a great finish. Has a lot of momentum. Best start of a career in his best start to a season in his career. Pretty self-explanatory why he's in the top 10. Chase Elliott, I think, I don't think he's the 9th most talented driver in NASCAR. He probably deserves to be a little bit higher, but everything is just good for him right now. I don't think he's done anything great, and you can argue that he's been the 4th slowest car out of the Hendrick stable. You could, maybe that's not his fault. And like I said, he's obviously an incredible talented driver. He's won a championship for a reason before. I'm just waiting to see Chase Elliott be consistently more out front, consistently getting points, and showing that he has the speed to win like some of the guys in front of him do. Even if he's not winning races. Joey Logano, I feel weird having him at 10. He still doesn't have a top 10 finish, but he's really fast at Martinsville, And, he's shown some speed at some tracks to start the year, even if it hasn't been at all. And I never, no matter how bad his season is, going Joey Logano proves he can come out of nowhere and proves he can rebound um, to good finishes. So I never want to completely count him out. And because of that, I have him 10th. Chris Buescher, another guy who's in the playoffs on points right now. He's in a good spot in points. But like he's kind of just quietly doing his business. He's not having an awful start to the year. I think he's having an above average start to the year. He isn't always great at Martinsville. He had, just kind of an average day, I feel like. He did kind of have a good third stage of Miami and really helped him score some points. But he's kind of just going around doing his job. Definitely the most consistent driver with RFK right now. Maybe Chris Buescher figures something out on the short track, even though the paperclip style short tracks have not been his strength. Chase Briscoe, I dropped super far down, and now he's super far up. Finally, I feel like Chase Briscoe's had speed all year, and he hasn't been able to capitalize off of it at all. And he finally capitalizes on it this week, gets stage points in stage 1, has a top 5 finish at Miami. Now he's going to one of his favorite tracks with a team that should be faster, although Chase Briscoe outperformed Martin Truex, has outperformed Martin Truex pretty much most years at Martinsville. So maybe the 19 team isn't fast. I don't know. But I know Chase Briscoe finally has some momentum. Maybe that team is finally starting to figure it out. Look out for him this week. If he has another good run this week, they could be getting towards a hot streak with 2 more tracks that Briscoe loves in Bristol and Darlington, just like some of these other top drivers. Josh Berry fell a little bit after getting his first career win. Qualified well, ran up front in the first stage, and then kind of was just okay the rest of the day. I don't think he capitalized as well as he could have. But he still has had speed at tracks this year. He likes small tracks. I'm interested to see if he can be fast, if he has some of that Penske speed that happens at Martinsville. And if he can definitely make some noise and show everybody that he's a serious contender. Because after last week, I see some people like, oh, he qualified well and like finish in the back. Maybe he, isn't a serious playoff contender or he's not going to do anything in the playoffs. I don't know. It's not like Vegas is an easy track to win. Keep an eye on Barry this weekend. There's a lot of guys that need some good runs or have some momentum coming in this week that could get there. Ross Chastain had an awful week at Miami, but he's still not like a bottom. He's still a top 15, top 10 driver. I think part of it is Trackhouse has struggled to have consistent speed, but they've been okay at Martinsville. Chastain has been good. Can Chastain rebound after a bad week last week? Ryan Preece for RFK Racing is starting to get hot. He's starting to stack some good finishes, having one of the better stretches of his career. He loves short tracks. That's where he comes from. Look for Ryan Preece to continue to do better. Kyle Busch, he's one of the best drivers in NASCAR, and I just feel like, I don't know if it's him or his team, there's something missing there with consistent speed that they can't find going back to last year. His teammate did run well last week in Austin Dillon. Usually Martinsville is a track that experienced drivers do the best, and Kyle Busch definitely has some of the most experience. Can he rebound and start climbing his way back up the little hole that he's dug for himself? I'm going to group John Hunter Nemechek, Michael McDowell, and Ricky Stenhouse together. They're 2 guys who have had good starts to the season, arguably the best starts of their career to a season. They were collecting points. They were in the top 15, all 3 of them. Now they're all in the top 20, so hanging around that cutoff area for playoff points. But they're starting to slow down. I think they're starting to lose some momentum, all 3 of them, and none of the 3 of them have done particularly well at Martinsville in their career. Obviously, John Hunter Nemechek doesn't have as many Cup Series starts there. This week, I feel like if they don't perform well this week and some of the other guys with big teams that are struggling do, all 3 of them could very easily drop out. But a good run here could set them up in a much better position and maybe keep them close in points as we continue to get into the meat of the NASCAR schedule. And then AJ Allmendinger in 18th had a great run at Miami. He's in the next gen. He's been one of the best Miami drivers. He's been pretty good at Martinsville in his career too. I'll be interested to see if Colleague can give him enough speed. And if he does, now, all of a sudden Allmendinger's in a position where he can continue to capitalize and have some good runs and be a threat to be around that cutoff line in points. And we certainly know what he's capable of on road courses. So maybe Kaulig just needs to give Allmendinger enough speed at these other tracks where he can ride around, 10th to 15th, maybe get some stage points here and there, and then do really well at road courses, and he can find himself in the playoffs. Still unlikely, but I think it's possible. Thank you for coming in. Like I said, I try to keep this episode short for you guys. I know I'm giving you giving you a lot of longer episodes. Let me know what other kind of content you want to see in the comments. Let me know your predictions for Martinsville and maybe some early things you've noticed about the NASCAR season. Put them in the comments. Any of your hot takes as well. I'd love to hear from you guys. So if there's anything you're noticing about the NASCAR season, let me know. Let me know who you think's going to win in the comments. Thank you for listening. Enjoy this weekend. Great NASCAR short track racing. First weekend of baseball. Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games for both men's and women's college basketball, and the NHL and the NBA are coming down the home stretch towards the playoffs. Great time of year for sports. One of the best times. I would say this early springtime and November are the two best times for sports. So enjoy this time. It's not quite summer yet, so you can still be inside all day on a weekend. Take advantage of it. Thank you for taking time out of your days, your weeks, and your lives for listening. Peace out.